I thought that's what love was. Compromise. By the time I noticed, I didn't recognize myself anymore.
I've been wanting to tell this for a long time because the version of me that lived inside that apartment wasn't a person so much as a quiet shape that apologized for taking oxygen. My name is Daniel, 34, the kind of man people tease for liking structure. Meal prep on Sundays, runs along the river before work, a notes app full of lists that make sense to me even when life doesn't. 2 summers ago, I met Vanessa at a rooftop birthday party where the wind made the paper lanterns look like shy moons. She was the kind of magnetic that makes you stand up straighter without trying. She laughed with her whole mouth, leaned in close, said she loved how I listened with intent. That first night she said, "You're safe," like a compliment. I didn't know then how that word could be turned into a cage with silk ribbons. We moved quickly in ways that felt like a victory. Farmers markets where she photographed peaches like they were celebrities. Dinners at places with chairs too pretty to be comfortable. Late-night confessions about parents and college mistakes, and the future we were building with our hands in the air. When she moved in, she called it seamless. I called my sister to say I had never felt so seen. The first week, Vanessa reorganized my kitchen to optimize flow. Spices went alphabetical, mugs disappeared to a shelf I needed a chair to reach. My ugly sweatshirt brown, soft, loyal found itself in a donation bag with a post-it that read, "You deserve better." I laughed because it was sweet. Then it wasn't. Her critiques arrived in gift wrap. "Your playlists are too algorithmic," she said, kissing my temple as if affection could soften the sentence. "Your sneakers are dad-coded. Your food is basic." Small words, a handful at a time, each landing like a coin in a jar I didn't notice was being filled. I canceled Thursday pickleball because she sighed about drowning in content deadlines. I skipped calls with my sister because Vanessa said my family was intense, and her nervous system needed quiet. When I cooked, she hovered, gently correcting how I chopped onions, how I salted pasta water, how I wiped the counter so the strokes are even. I apologized the way some people hum without hearing themselves do it. Rules changed weekly. Leave a water glass on the coffee table, and a photo would appear on my phone. We talked about coasters. Load the dishwasher like a normal mammal, and find her silently reloading it. If I asked, "Did I do something?" she'd sigh, "I hate who I become around you." And I'd be the one saying sorry for the stranger she disliked. Then came Love Bomb Weekends Palm Springs, because you worked so hard. Handwritten notes with hearts above the eye that said I was her anchor and her light. I learned the rhythm. Criticism, distance, reward. It looked like love if you squinted. Her friends operated like a choir. Group chats with names like Ocean and Nectar chimed in at all hours with voice notes about energies and boundaries. If I missed a midnight karaoke because of a release the next morning, an Instagram story would appear. Some people make you choose between love and spontaneity. Broken heart reactions followed. At breakfast, Vanessa pushed her eggs around and murmured, "It's hard to feel chosen when you prioritize a sprint over presence." I tipped too much and promised to do better, a phrase I started to hate because I never knew the metric. Withdrawal was the worst. She could disappear without leaving the room, eyes distant, monosyllables only, the kind of silence that bends the air. "I'm taking space," she'd say. "Your energy is loud." Once I came home from 12 hours firefighting a production bug to find a note on the counter, "Please be quiet," meditating. I stood on the mat by the door as if it were a border. The apartment felt like a lobby I wasn't allowed to enter without permission. There's a special kind of loneliness in being ghosted by someone who is wearing your t-shirt. My birthday was the first crack I couldn't smooth over. She threw a dinner at a place where plates were tiny and speakers loud. When the cake arrived, Vanessa tapped her glass and delivered a speech about how she had taught me to be open, how I used to be stiff, and now I was softer. People clapped. I smiled because that's what you do when a favorite person edits you in public. Later in the Uber I said, "Could you not narrate me?" She stared at the city like it had offended her and said, "You're impossible to celebrate. It's exhausting." I looked out the opposite window and felt something small and stubborn in me sit down. I started typing things I shouldn't have to type into a search bar. Am I being emotionally abused if? The tab stayed open behind other tabs like guilty children. I told myself she was stressed, that freelance life was chaos, that sensitive people bruise easy. Somewhere in there the sentence formed without permission. She made me believe I wasn't enough. On bad mornings, its twin arrived. I am too much. Too serious. Too careful. To me. I learned there are storms so quiet you don't know you're soaked until you change clothes, and everything is heavy with a smell you can't name. We adopted a cat for vibes. A tuxedo with improbable whiskers who immediately chose me, and then pretended it was an accident. We called him Sprite, because he fizzed when you scratched the right spot under his chin. Vanessa said he preferred me because you feed him, then took over feeding. He still followed me. I started narrating mornings to him while she scrolled in bed. We're going to be brave today, I whispered into fur that didn't judge. Work swelled the way work does when you're tired. A new VP loved disrupting process and suddenly planning meetings were animated decks about moonshots. I coped by trying to be excellent. When I got home late, brain frayed, Vanessa was angry because I'd missed golden hour for a TikTok she needed me in. You think my work is fake, she snapped absurd, and also maybe I did carry contempt for ring lights I didn't understand. She made me name it. Say you think I'm shallow. I said I didn't. She said my avoidant energy was making her ill. I slept on the sofa to be safe, and she posted a story about learning to self-soothe. Her friend Devin started showing up. He had jokes with edges and a laugh half a second late. He wore a beanie at all temperatures and called me brother, in a tone that made the word feel like a leash. Vanessa called him an investor. He had a key before I realized he did. He rated people's growth mindset on the couch while eating leftovers I paid for. Dan's getting there, Vanessa chirped. We're working on his scarcity thing. I was in the room, a person in a sentence spoken like a lab report. When I tried to speak, Devin lifted a palm dash, let him process, and humiliation came on like heat. Isolation was a method dressed as circumstance. If I wanted to see my sister, Vanessa scheduled a brand dinner. If I mentioned hiking Saturday, she reminded me we'd promised to help Luna move plants dash. You never listen. Suggest enough plans, and you learn that asking is risk. Hope becomes the exhausting hobby you practice alone. When my dad had a minor heart scare, Vanessa sent flowers but didn't visit. Hospitals drain me, she said. In the car I said it hurt, and she answered, You're making this about you. It's your dad. The sentence landed like a door clicking shut. The first time I felt the border of leaving, I walked past the corner where I always turned, past the hardware store whose owner waves at dawn, past the bakery with croissants that taste like holidays, past a pale greenhouse with a chalkboard that says tea not war. The light turned the street into something forgiving. I pictured a small place with an uncurated couch. I pictured buying an ugly lamp and eating garlic without notes. I pictured calling my sister back every time. The picture stayed with me like something I could actually hold. Money became a lever. The couch was replaced with one that cost as much as my first car. When I looked at my savings, Vanessa called it poverty mindset. As she offered to help build abundance, made a budget spreadsheet I could never open correctly, and sighed that I didn't trust her when I asked a question. A brand loaned her a car for content, which meant mandatory road trips to maximize deliverables. I drove. Gas was on me. They don't cover that part. When I asked to pause for a month because my card balance made me lightheaded, she said, I can't lose momentum because you're scared. We went anyway. One night Devin left an account logged in on our TV. His watch list was movies about blowing things up and seduction and a documentary about a man who lived in a tree. For a minute, I was furious at the tree. I texted Vanessa, Why does Devin have a profile on our TV? She replied, Chill. Then, You're embarrassing yourself. Then nothing for 2 hours. The next morning she made pancakes and kissed my shoulder and called me by a nickname she'd retired. I ate and forgot my promises to myself the way some people forget umbrellas, only noticing in a downpour. Sprite got sick, nothing dramatic, just miserable and small. Vanessa posted send good vibes and went to a launch party because I can't cancel last minute. I sat on the floor by the litter box and felt something clean and old. Usefulness. I held a creature who needed exactly what I had to give. When she came home glittering and loud with someone else's night, I was asleep on the kitchen mat with the cat against my ribs. She stepped over us like a crack in the sidewalk. The confrontation that wasn't supposed to happen happened on a Wednesday, because Wednesdays are when quiet breaks. We were late to Luna's to help build a plant wall that looked like a green screen. I texted Vanessa that a deploy went sideways. I'd be an hour. She didn't respond. When I arrived, she was on a stool under string, lights describing my journey to a circle that laughed like a studio audience. When we met, he was so closed, she said. He's opening. Slowly. We love that for him. People clapped. Someone clinked a mason jar. I stood in the doorway with a bag of potting soil and felt my face get hot like the air had thinned only for me. On the walk home, I said I didn't like being material for her bit. She said I'd embarrassed her by arriving with dirt on my shirt. You make everything utilitarian, she said like a diagnosis. You don't enter a room, you function in it. I said that sounded like a compliment to a grown adult. She rolled her eyes. This is why we can't evolve. We walked past a bar where a man sang off-key and happy. She added, you want the world to be simple. I said, I want to be kind to myself in it. The sentence felt like a code I'd forgotten fit. Back upstairs, the apartment was too bright. She likes every light on. She started packing a tote bag with theatrical clangs. I stayed seated because a therapist once told me I didn't have to pick up every rope thrown at me. At the door she said, I can't do this if you're going to be small. I asked what small meant. She said, when you need me to baby you. I looked at the sink full of dishes I always washed, the credit card bill with restaurants I didn't pick, the calendar where my family visits were crossed out in red. I don't need a mother, I said. I need a partner who doesn't treat me like a project. She froze, bag strap in her hand, and turned slowly. Do you hear yourself? She whispered. How cruel that sounds. It was strange. I thought I sounded clear. Tears came, the kind that photograph well. You don't make me feel safe, she said. I remembered a list I'd read about how manipulative people invert blame and breathe through my nose the way you do before turbulence. My phone lit up. Devin, hey, you good? Need me to swing by? I must have looked different because she smiled, small and mean. He shows up for me, she said. Something old in me broke open. Call him, I said. If you need him here to talk to me in my house, call him. I'll make tea. She didn't call. She closed herself in the bathroom for a long time. I counted the tiny holes on the speaker grill because counting gives fear offense. When she came out, she was the version of herself I met. Soft edges, hand on my shoulder. I don't want to fight, she said. I'm sorry if I made you feel small. It was the if that did it. I am small with you, I said. That's not the same as being small. She blinked, hurt or pretending to be. Maybe we're just different, she offered, like a truce. We are, I said gently. And I keep trying to be your same. I walked to the river because water tells the truth without words. The air smelled like someone grilling 2 blocks away. A jogger nodded. A couple argued kindly about a TV show. I called my sister, Emily, and gave her the fast version. She didn't say leave or stay. She said, what do you need? I tried to answer and realized I hadn't been asked that in months. I need to feel like I'm not failing at breathing, I said. Good, she said. Start there. Back home, Vanessa had set 2 bowls of ramen and the good chopsticks. Truce, she asked. We ate quietly. Halfway through she said, I've been thinking about something hard. I braced. I don't think you're ready for me, she said. I need more. Adventure. Risk. More. She gestured at air like she could sculpt a better me. You're very consistent. I put my chopsticks down. I like consistent, I said. Consistent is how planes land. She laughed like a cough. Who taught you that line? Your therapist. A river, I said. She rolled her eyes so hard I worried she'd fall. The next day, I made a plan the way I know how. Lists, dates, contingencies. People say fight or flight. I prefer land. I would land somewhere else. I pulled my credit report, looked at numbers like they were a poem. I toured studios with windows that didn't face a billboard. I started a folder called Move and put screenshots in it like prayers. I moved autopay off the joint card. I hid cash in an old shoe. When you begin to leave, the house notices. Floors creak differently. Cats become clingy. People who benefit from the blur sense the outline forming. They either step back or push. Vanessa pushed. A couple's retreat led by a woman named Starling, a photo shoot to capture our growth, sudden interest in my job, big questions with ears closed. The night before the retreat, she opened champagne to set intentions. Hers, radical expansion. Mine, kindness. She laughed at the smallness. That's default, she said. Pick something big. Staying, I said. Her face flashed anger and fear. Are you threatening me? No, I said. I'm telling the truth. I didn't go to the retreat. I packed while she was gone. I left a letter that wasn't cruel once. I did not list her sins. I wrote about me. I want a life where I don't audition. I want a home where silence isn't punishment. I left my key on the counter. I took Sprite in his carrier. I walked out. She called 45 times. The voicemails were a museum of moods. Screaming, pleading, bargaining, nostalgia, accusation, finally indifference. One said, "You'll never find someone like me." And I felt relief so sharp it made me laugh. In my empty studio on a borrowed lawn chair, I cried loud for the first time in a year. I cried for the man who learned to perform okayness. I cried for the little notes that added up to absence. I cried for the relief of not being an exhibit in someone's feed. Sprite climbed my chest and fell asleep, heavy with trust. Leaving wasn't an ending, just the end of a performance. The first week alone had a hangover taste. I woke at 6 because the old house had trained me to tiptoe and lay there listening for a song that wasn't playing. The studio had a radiator that clicked like a friendly metronome and a window that underestimated rain. I loved both because they were honest about what they were. I bought a lamp that made a circle of warm light on the wall and a couch that would never be asked to be content. I cooked garlic the way I like it, and nobody called it basic. Vanessa flooded the world with our story. A 12-slide carousel about choosing self, including a photo of my hand holding coffee. The caption, "When you outgrow someone you love." DMs slid in from her friends. "Proud of you both. Wow. Never thought you'd hurt her like this." Devin texted, "Come grab your stuff like a man," which was rich because I had paid for the cabinet that held his beanies. I didn't respond. My therapist suggested the internet is a hallway I didn't have to walk down. Sprite came to live with me permanently when Vanessa announced her allergies were suddenly activated. I didn't argue with miracles. He did a perimeter check like a tiny security guard and claimed the sill. Loving something small that loves you back without conditions is medicine. He tethered me to routines that were for me, not for a camera. "We're doing okay," I told him while he blinked like a cat who has heard this speech and approves. Therapy was 3 tissue boxes and a metaphor about erosion. I said I felt stupid for not leaving sooner. "You left when you were ready," my therapist said, which isn't a measuring stick you can bruise yourself with. She had me list phrases that still echoed and then name my truth. She, "You're rigid." Me, "I am consistent." She, "You're scared." Me, "I am careful." She, "You don't dream big." Me, "I dream close." It was like learning my own language again after speaking someone else's dialect, so long I forgot vowels. Guilt found me anyway, not about leaving, but about the ways I bent. I remembered laughing at jokes about me to seem cool. I remembered telling my mother she was too much when she asked, gently, if I was happy. I remembered warning signs I labeled quirks, because the alternative would have meant admitting I had chosen wrong. Grief makes villains, my therapist said. Make sure you're not casting yourself forever. Vanessa didn't vanish. She tagged my favorite coffee shop in a post about healing drinks, so I lost that place for a month. She texted, "Hope you're well," like we were colleagues. I didn't reply. She sent a photo of Sprite asleep in my lap with "Miss him." I wrote, "He's good." "You're cold," she answered. I put the phone face down and let it be somebody else's weather. Loneliness wasn't all bad. There's a quiet that tastes like shame and another that tastes like clean water. I learned the difference. I read a book on the couch and realized an hour passed without checking anything. I let dishes dry on a towel and no one photographed them as evidence. I went to a movie alone and didn't perform my aloneness. I ran into Luna at the market and she said, "You seem lighter." "I am," I said. She bought 5 avocados and said, "He was a lot." And we both pretended not to know which he. Healing is boring more often than not. You drink water. You walk outside. You stop narrating for an imaginary audience. You do your job and come home and feed the cat and change the sheets. One afternoon you realize you didn't think of her for 2 hours, and then 6, and then a day. When thoughts came, I tried to let them pass like clouds. "There's Vanessa," I'd say to myself. There she is. No thunder, no prophecy, just weather. At a hardware store months later, I ran into Devin buying light bulbs like a man rehearsing adulthood. "Brother," he said. "Please don't," I said, and his laugh arrived a half step late. "Vanessa says you're thriving," he offered, making thriving sound accidental. "I am," I said. He flinched like I'd thrown something. I went home and realized truth sounds like bragging in rooms that prefer performance. My mother visited with lasagna and called Sprite sir. which he deserved. We watched a show about a chef who cries about tomatoes. She said, "I like you. Like this." I said, "Me too." She asked if I was dating. I said no. She said good, giving me permission to be unhurried. After she left, I pictured myself as a house with light in more than one window. It felt accurate and kind. Empowerment turned out to be smaller than movies pitched it. Not a banner, a handful of ordinary choices. Buying blueberries without consulting a group chat. Deleting photos that made me scenery. Looking at my bank account and recognizing the number because it was mine. Tying my shoes and feeling like I had just said yes to my own day. There were bigger moments. A mutual friend emailed, "Did you know Vanessa's GoFundMe says leaving an emotionally abusive partner took everything?" The page used a photo from a hike where I carried the backpack and the snacks and the story. I laughed, then got tired in a way that felt like my bones sat down. I wrote back, "Please don't send me anything else about her. I'm building a life where that link doesn't open." Then I went for a run in the rain and didn't take a single picture, a rebellious act that meant more than it should. A small big thing. Coffee with Maya, a woman on my floor who reads on the stairs when the light is right. We met in the elevator when Sprite attempted escape. "He looks like he owns a yacht," she said, and I laughed and loved her a tiny bit for naming the cat secret. Coffee tasted like relief. I told her I was out of practice. "Good," she said. "Less choreography." We split the check because it made sense, not because it proved anything. She texted later a line from a book. Sometimes the bravest thing is to remain. Remain didn't mean stay in harm. It meant stay with yourself. Vanessa called from a new number and left a long voicemail that toured nostalgia, confession, accusation. She said she missed my steadiness, that no one held space like I did, that Devin was a project, and she was over projects. She asked for dinner for closure. I didn't respond because closure is sometimes a room with no exits. She posted a poem about forgiveness. I watered my plants. The poem got 2,000 likes. The plant got greener. Legally, unwinding was simple because we never married and only merged weekends and a card. I closed the account, redirected packages, changed my locks, asked my landlord for a new mailbox key because the last one belonged to someone who believed in manifesting more than maintenance requests. He handed me a key and said, "You seem good." "I am," I said, and meant it in my collarbones. The mirror stopped being a courtroom. I shaved because I wanted to, not to look intentional. I bought sneakers that were happily dad-coated. I cooked in my way olive oil, garlic, the same chili flakes, and nobody turned basic into a misdemeanor. I told Emily a dumb story about Sprite attacking the broom. She snort-laughed and said, "You sound like my brother again." I stood in my kitchen and let that sentence land like a blessing. I don't know what Vanessa tells people now. Maybe I'm a villain in 100 living rooms. Maybe I'm a cautionary tale in a group chat named after a fruit. Maybe I'm a lesson about what happens when you try to hold water with your hands. That's fine. I used to want the last word. Now I want first mornings, sunlight, coffee, cat, a text from my sister, the neighbor's piano 2 floors down. I kept this sentence for last because it's true and I earned it. She made me believe I wasn't enough until I realized she was the one who was empty. I'm not here to diagnose her. My therapist says that's the wrong project. I'm here to say emptiness can be charismatic and expensive. It can look like work. It can sell you a couch. It can make you audition for love. And still, when the lights turn off, it will ask you to fill it and blame you when you spill. If you're reading this because you're walking around your own house trying to find why you feel small, I want to hand you what helped me. None of it is magic. All of it is a miracle. First, write down what happened without adjectives. Then write how it made you feel with as many adjectives as you need. The facts will protect you from amnesia. The feelings will keep you from pretending it didn't hurt. Second, make a plan like you're the person you were before you shrank. Plans are how some of us pray. Third, tell one person the truth. If you don't have someone, tell a cat or a plant or the river. A creature that doesn't applaud will still witness. Fourth, buy a lamp. It sounds dumb. It isn't. Make a circle of warm light you can sit inside when you forget why you left. Fifth, if they post about you, let the internet be a hallway you do not walk down. You cannot teach a crowd the difference between a story and a trap. Let them clap. Let them yawn. Build a dinner instead. The day you stop promising to leave and start packing will feel like you're betraying a religion you didn't know you joined. You will mourn the version of you who kept trying. Mourn him. He was loyal. But don't worship persistence when it's killing you. Alphabetize your spices in the new place and then ruin the order on purpose. Buy the ugly sweatshirt back in your mind and wear it until it smells like home. Be basic, if basic is the shape of your joy. There will be a morning when you tie your shoes and it feels like a promise instead of a task. There will be a night when you choose to stay in not because you're depressed, but because your couch is the softest thing you own and you made pasta the way you like. There will be a week without rehearsed arguments in your shower. These are not small. They are the exact size of a life. Count them. Sometimes I still hear her, not a voice, more a draft under a door. Some critiques hang on your walls a while. I look at them and say, that's not my voice, out loud. Sprite blinks, satisfied, and returns to dreaming about hunting the broom. I text Emily a photo of the plant still alive, and she sends a metal emoji like we invented chlorophyll. My therapist says peace looks like boring to people who survive on adrenaline. I write that down and circle it. I ran into Vanessa at the market last week because fate likes produce. She looked the same, beautiful and tired. You look well, she said. I am. I answered, not as defiance but as weather. I'm working on myself, she said. Good. Do you hate me? No. Do you miss me? I miss who I thought I was with you. We stood there while a kid shouted about apples. She said, you were always so safe. I said, I still am, and bought blueberries because I could. I have a couch nobody curated, and a cat who thinks I'm a continent, and a sister who saves me a chair in every room. I have a job that is not a sin. I have a lamp that makes a circle where I sit to write this. Air, just air, not evidence. The radiator clicks. The neighbor practices piano without shame. I am not empty. I am full of small, ordinary light. On good days and bad, I put my feet on the floor and hear the house say yes. If you needed me to say it plain, you are enough. The emptiness you are working so hard to fill is not yours. You can set the bag down. You can walk home. There will be blueberries. There will be a cat. There will be a morning so quiet you'll hear your own name, and it won't sound like a verdict. It will sound like you arriving.